After another exciting weekend of LOI action, Shells have come out with two draws. Could it have been a bit more, or is it two valuable points banked with a long season to come? To give us his own perspective, as always, an in-depth analysis. Dunny, great to see you again. I hope you had a good week.
How you doing, Andy? Yep, good to be back. Plenty to talk about anyway. No lack of action.
There's plenty of drama and talking points across the LOI as always. But before we get stuck into the men's side of things, both of us were at the Women's President's Cup final last Saturday. Shells, women's team, made it a double for the club with a good, professional, and I would say an encouraging start over a good Athlone team with a 2-1 win. We'll have a full preview later in the week with Shauna Cook, but just your thoughts on that game, Dunny. I know you were there yourself.
Yeah, I was. It was good to be back in Talca on a Saturday. Everybody who's come to games at Talca will know that it's a particularly enjoyable vibe on a Saturday afternoon. I felt like a little bit of a transition coming a little bit later. Normally we would have been a 2 o'clock kickoff. It was 3 this Saturday, and it's going to be 4 from now on. So I think that extra hour was nice. Was a little less pressure on people to get whatever they were doing in the morning out of the way. And I really hope this 4 o'clock kickoff time is going to benefit us with getting more fans through the turnstiles, because it was good to see healthy numbers there on Saturday. And a little bit of history. We spoke about it on the pod last week, that there was a chance that Michael D would be handing his last ever President's Cup over to Shell's captain, Foiro times 2. And yeah, he did that. So we're the first club ever to win and to hold 2 President's Cups simultaneously. And yeah, as I said, nice to sort of have Michael D bow out with handing over the double in Talca, and frankly got a little bit of emotion, a bit of a wobble in the throat as I saw himself and Pearl had a really lovely interaction on the pitch. I think she absolutely gets the significance as well, and there was very much a respect shown between the two stalwarts there in their own field. So yeah, it was great day, great to come out with the win. Athlone looked every bit the challenge that you'd expect them to be. We looked sharp and confident at times, but had to put up a lot of rearguard action to try and keep a very dangerous Athlone team at bay. Almost did it. Bit unlucky with the penalty that we conceded, but we managed to hold out. So I think that's probably a sign of things to come. Nip and tuck games, the odd goal, winning it, and I'd expect to see a lot more of that during the season.
Yeah, it was a nice embrace between Pearl and Luke Duran Heron. As you said, two legends. Both know the significance of it. But the real league action gets underway, as you said, Donny, this Saturday, 4 p.m. against Shamrock Rovers in Talca. I'll, and hopefully yourself, be speaking to Shauna later this week, and we'll give that the due attention it deserves. Now, back to last Friday night. The Talca Park absolutely packed to the rafters. There wasn't a curry chip left in the house. But the real action on the field, Donny, it ended up in a draw. Your thoughts? It was a bit of a scrappy game first half, but Chelsea certainly seemed to take a stranglehold second half. Was a fair result to draw, do you think?
I know people are in two minds about it. I spoke to some people at the club on Saturday, and some felt that we'd left things behind. Others felt it was a sign of how far we'd come. That to be a little underwhelmed with the draw against Shamrock Rovers shows that we've made a lot of progress. And that sort of maybe inherent inferiority that we might have carried with us up until extremely recently is now a thing of the past. Um, I wouldn't have been too unhappy with the result going in, and I wasn't too unhappy with the result coming out. So, frankly, like, well, look, let's talk about the occasion. Maybe first, as you said, Talca absolutely rammed, and maybe the thing that I enjoyed most of all about the evening was just taking the time at various points to look around and sort of just soak in how brilliant Talca looks under the lights when the place is full. Um, having a full away end as well, packed with 1,000 Shamrock Rovers fans, really adds to the occasion. Brilliant display from boys 1895. Brilliant numbers in the Riverside and everywhere else. I was in earlier than I'd normally be, and I was taken aback by how many seats were already occupied across from me in the main stand. Queues for everything out the gate as per usual. And just like a real sense of like, okay, we're like, this is it, we're back now, and a big derby to sort of whet the appetite. We came out of the blocks like a bat out of hell, very reminiscent of the 2-1 win that we had there last season, which started with a Mark Coyle wonder strike, an even earlier goal this week, of course, albeit not at the same sort of quality on the eye. But I thought we were untouchable there for about up until Sam Bone's injury, possibly. I felt like I had to check myself a few times where I was just looking at how we were really taking the fight to Rovers and had them on the back foot, and just phase after phase of probing and pressing at them. I was like, Jesus, we look a lot better than last year. Even I was like, I mean, if we're doing this to Rovers, I didn't say it out loud. I'm saying it out loud now, but I was thinking, no one's going to be able to live with this team if they play like this. Like this, it was swashbuckling football. Like, and then we took the lead, as I said, and we kept it up. But when we came off it, and I have it written down here in my notes, the duality of performance, meaning it's a bit Jekyll and Hyde, where when we were on top of them, we looked untouchable, and then when we let up a little bit, or when they managed to get a hold in the game, we looked quite vulnerable, I thought. And that led to periods where, frankly, I thought it was just a matter of time before they were going to score. We were camped on the edge of our box. We couldn't seem to kick the ball out of play. Never mind sort of regain possession for a long time. It was just constant recycling for them. They looked extremely dangerous. And ultimately, it's unfortunate that they didn't really have to do anything special to get their goal. It was gifted to them. But on the whole, then, because of these periods of duality where we looked brilliant and then we looked vulnerable and back and forth, now we did finish the game stronger. There's no doubt about that. And our shape in the second half, we could maybe touch on that, gave us a better platform, I think, maybe to be more sturdy. We might feel, like the boxer who finishes the fight stronger. You think, well, if that was in the schoolyard, we won. But that's, it's done on points when the whistle goes or the bell goes, and it's not done on schoolyard rules. So I think we have to be, man enough to take the draw on the chin.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Rovers, there's not very often you could say that Rovers are perhaps there for the taking, but they have quite a few injuries, and we did have that lightning start. But I would absolutely agree with you that when you have someone down like that, a team like Rovers, you got to keep your foot on their neck. We did shoot ourselves in the foot, uncharacteristically with that goal we gave away. I think you could just feel the groans and the sighs in the ground. People just, after such a lightning start. But that, these things happen in football. But I was going to, as you mentioned there, first half, I think after the goal, I thought we lost our way a little bit. As I said, these things happen. Big night. Sam Bone, unfortunately, took a knock. And after that, I think that knocked us for 10, 15 minutes, or even perhaps up to half time. And that's no reflection on James Norris, who I thought it was excellent, both against Shamrock Rovers and again against Galway. But talk to us about that formation switch at half time, Donny. You're spot on. Second half, things looked a lot different. Rovers, through Dan Cleary particularly, and Pico Lopez at the back, almost, I think, seemed happier to defend their box. Nearly got away with it. I thought we perhaps could have had a penalty for handball, which the referee didn't even give a free kick. And then we had a very good chance from Meepo. He volleyed over the box from about 10 yards. And then probably the best chance was the bit of a hammer left foot drive from James Norris. But, our foot either side of the keeper, it could have been 2-1. So anyway, a lot to unpack there, Donny. Let's start maybe with the half-time change of formation.
Yeah, well, again, speaking of dualities, we're getting used to this Meepo and Boyd combo up front, the 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1 at times, I suppose. But it really is more of a standard 4-4-2, which is great going forward. And when you have a team on the back foot, and they have two headaches rather than one in Boyd and Meepo, we've seen how we disposed of Derry comfortably and how we looked elsewhere between the President's Cup and down in Waterford, causing a lot of problems. But perhaps Friday against Rovers was maybe the first sign of, like, when you're up against a team with quality footballers in possession of the ball, how much more apparent the space that having the four in midfield rather than your extra fifth midfielder or your third central midfielder, more to the point. I was speaking to Will Clark after the game about it, and we both agreed there was times in that half where the gaps were there for Rovers just to step into, and they have players who are happy to carry the ball. They love having touches on the ball. They love being in possession, and are not backward about going forward. And that's what happened. It seemed for me, as you said, after the injury, that when we restarted, they suddenly, once they saw those gaps they were getting from sort of the edge of their D to around the edge of our D, from their third to our third, incredibly quickly, either by carrying or by maybe doing a give and go. So there was gaps there that needed to be plugged. And then we ended up with a formation in the second half with wing backs, with Norris on the left, and Evan Caffrey as a right wing back. We might talk about his performance in Galway in the same position. I thought that actually probably suited him, maybe more even than as an orthodox winger. But that just gave a little bit of a license of us to plug those holes. And Rovers, I think fatigue probably might have ultimately played a part as well, but there wasn't overt space for them to go and attack and to run into any more in the second half. So it allowed us to sort of stop their momentum and kind of reset and sort of probe at them from a different angle. The second half was, less nervy from a defensive point of view, but I think ultimately created less opportunities for everybody, really, because of the more stifled nature of that five at the back.
Yeah, I think Rovers are showing similar signs to last year with a sluggish start from their, high standards. But, that's like. I'm sure we'd all agree that won't last for long. So they'll still definitely be in the mix as things go on. So a point on the night, I think, was probably a good point in the bank. Ideally, they're the ones you'd love to nick at the end to make, to really put a shine on things. I think Damien Duff's comments afterwards again were positive. I think he's very philosophical about these games. It's very early in the season, and as long as you're picking up points or not losing ground to your, let's say, rivals, it's managing the early rounds of games which come thick and fast, and that's something that this team have learned. If we go back 3 or 4 years, when Damien, his very first game, I think, was against Pats and Talca. Shells didn't play badly, but they got a 3-0 spanking that night, and then it took them maybe 3 or 4 games, I think, to get a win. But we're definitely seeing a maturity now from the Shell squad.
Yeah. Well, I think even, there's this sort of old adage of win your home games, pick up points elsewhere where you can, stay unbeaten as much as you can away from home. Point on the road's never too bad. 3 points at home obviously is great. And we started that way, but we started with the win at home, and we've won away as well, and now we've got 2 draws. But if you even them out, you could say, well, that's the same amount of points as if we'd won at home and drawn away both games. And if someone had placed that in front of you on a docket on the fixtures before a ball was kicked, 3 points at home, 1 point away, times 2, you'd absolutely take that. Obviously, there's elements of momentum and so on that, as you said, and we did allude to it here, that there was a significance maybe of when you do get 3 points over a team like Shamrock Rovers, that it gives that sort of air of confidence and superiority maybe within the squad that you don't necessarily get from beating teams that aren't expected to be challenging with you. But ultimately, as you said, it's early days, and compared to some of the people who we might consider to be our rivals, I think there's an awful lot of teams in the league who would happily trade places where we are. And it's not just a mathematics thing about points on the board. I think the way the wind is blowing is quite obvious that we are better than we were, and that we're not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a positive result. I don't think anyone should be too overly concerned. Certainly, that's something we wouldn't have said a few years ago. Drawing against Rovers. So, in the greater scheme of things, with a long season ahead, it's another point. You mentioned a little bit earlier, Donny, about talk itself. I think the two of us must be drinking the same Kool-Aid, because I felt that surge of emotion as well. Maybe I'm just getting too old, but it was great to see people around, even up on in Drumcondra itself. Scalpers, is that what they call them? The guys out buying and selling tickets, and
Mm.
anyone selling spares. This is something that we haven't seen in a long time. And the LOI is the only show in town when there's people fighting over tickets for Talca Park, but really big crowd. What does the club need to do now to keep that going week after week? I think it was over 5,200 officially on LOI Connect. We're not going to get that every single game, but what can the club do now to really reach those heights as much as possible?
Yeah, well, I agree with you, and I have been known to be fond of a bit of nostalgia and a bit of high emotion myself, Andy. But I think it's
Yep.
anyone who's been around the club for any length of time can see that um, that it's great positivity around the place and the league in general, but particularly for ourselves, who, as we've discussed previously, came so close to potential oblivion with the demolition of Talca Park on the cards and whatnot, and what that would have meant for Shells. So to be reaping such rewards so soon in the aftermath of that existential crisis is it's jarring, and that's why it still feels very raw and emotional to me to have nights like that, and to have them so regularly now. I don't take it for granted. Um, and I don't think anybody who knows the score does either. But yeah, the issue of the sort of the for want of a better term, the economy, the local economy around Talca is something that we should be leaning into, and not just as our own football club, but as the league in general, to show the positive effects to local business and local communities for offering entertainment, offering something aspirational, something productive to do in the community, an asset, something to be proud of that's on your doorstep. And when it comes to hostilleries and food vendors and whatnot, that the people who come to the matches are literally putting their hands in their pocket and helping local communities and local businesses. So, like, too long the league has been sneered at. We kind of touched on it last week a little bit as well, after Stephen Bradley's comments and Damien Duff's comments. So we need to be proud about, this is something that happens. We have 36 league games. This isn't something that happens 4 or 5 times during the summer. This is an ongoing thing, and we are, the League of Ireland fan base is really given something of significance to the community in tangible and in intangible ways. But when it comes to Shells themselves and the ground and maximising capacity, I have it on good authority that Neil Doyle is almost as obsessed as some of my friends are about getting the very biggest amount into Talca as possible when it comes to capacity and increasing capacity. That it's one of his real hobby horses, that he wants to increase capacity ASAP. It feels to me like we might be at a little bit of a, not an impasse, but a sort of a pause, possibly, whereby you saw 1,000 people in the away, and that's partially why we were able to get over 5,200 people into the ground. That's going to be what that's going to be. That's 1,000 away fans. We're not going to let any more in than that, nor should we, in my opinion. But so you're talking about 4,200 ish home attendance. We need to make sure that we have close to sellouts for home games, regardless whether they're derbies or not. At this point, thankfully, because we're so competitive, the derbies almost look after themselves. But it's all of the other games that, the points count the same, that we need to have, big atmosphere, big sense of occasions around, like our next two upcoming fixtures, for example, against Drogheda and Cork. So if there's any more we can do in the community, I know there are two full-time community officers now working between the men's and women's sides in the area with schools, affiliate clubs, and our own academy section to get people in. I think we could do more with local businesses, maybe to promote with posters and so on locally. But I would like to see, maybe, if we're talking about actually, so I mean, long term, that's what you need to do. You need to embed yourself in the community and through the football clubs and through the schools, I think is the primary area. Having a little look around on Friday, myself and Derek the barber were over what he calls Section P, the terrace towards the toilets, on the riverside, and I think there might be there's what seems, it mightn't be arbitrary, but it seems somewhat arbitrary delineation there of the green barrier, the green fence, quite a few rows down from where the flagpoles are. I wonder if we wanted to squeeze another 150, 200 people into that side, could we move that fence back a few rows, and simply increase the capacity of that terrace section on the Drumcondra side of the riverside. But maybe, as I said, to be a bit more pragmatic in the short term, maybe just continuing to sell out those home ends for the Droghedas, Sligos, Corks, and so on is where we need to focus next.
Yeah, Talk is a very special place. I don't think I need to tell that to anyone. And we'll cover, no doubt, the story perhaps behind the save Talca Park in the weeks ahead. A lot of untold stories to get us to this point. What I would say is to anyone in Talca Park on match nights is just to love it and respect it, because it's our home, and it's important that we look after it and so on. Mossy Quinn is going to be coming soon, Dunny. He's due to take up his position, I think, in early April. Neil Doyle, as you mentioned there, has been a fairly impressive stand-in CEO. I know Neil will be going nowhere when Mossy takes over, so perhaps we can spend some time with either of those guys in the weeks ahead. It'd be very interesting to delve into their mindset and so on. So we'll do our best to book in some time with Mossy or Neil. I'm sure they'd be delighted to join us. So last night we travelled west to one of our not so favourite hunting grounds, Terryland Park, aka Eamon DC Park. I was there. You had the comfort of your nice warm armchair, Dunny. Shells again, point on the road. Slightly better performance from when we've played in Galway in the past. I think, again, a bit of a tinge of disappointment. 2 points dropped. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a different, same result, obviously, as Friday. A little bit, personally now, a little bit more of a feeling of one that got away than Friday. Because I didn't feel that there were as many periods of dominance that Galway exerted on us as Rovers had. I didn't feel they looked as threatening. I don't feel that they're naturally pound for pound as threatening a football team as Shamrock Rovers are. They have their strengths. One of their major strengths being their strength and their physicality. And, we knew that going in. I don't think it was by any chance or happenstance that we went with that Lewis Temple made his debut for this season. We went with three big, strong centre backs to try and counter the long throws that we knew would come, the set pieces that we knew would come, and so on. And largely, we gave what would have been seen as, had we come away with a 1-0 win, an absolute textbook away from home performance. Long periods of passing the ball, not aimlessly, but patiently, to maybe take the energy out of the home crowd who were well up for it, to force their players, their frontline players in particular, to do a lot of sprinting off the ball, closing down, a lot of running on a very heavy pitch, to sort of tire them out, to make them maybe a bit leggy. And then we hit them later on in the game, coming up on an hour, and that would have been the perfect time to say, okay, we have our goal now. We don't have to go chasing anything and try and box clever. So up until the goal, I think we gave an exceptional performance. Patient, clever, no one doing anything too reckless, playing to some of our strengths and trying to limit theirs. And then I'm not really sure what happened, to be honest. Like with the change in dynamic on Friday, there was an injury, which we discussed, a break in play. Substitutions had to happen with our goal, and
it was a strange one, Donny, wasn't it?
The restart. It just felt like, within seconds, Conor Kearns was pulling off the save of the match. Well, Brendan Clark might have matched him late with Paddy Barrett's header, but was certainly from a Shelbourne's perspective the save of the match. And you thought, okay, well, geez, that was, we switched off there. That's a warning sign. That won't happen again. But we didn't get our composure back at all until after they'd equalised. So, we'd spoken about game management and sort of blind spots when it came to that we'd maybe shown away to Waterford about not playing the moment correctly, not boxing clever when we had advantages, and maybe running the clock a little bit, or some of the dark arts, possibly just being clever, and we weren't. And unfortunately, the goal that we conceded, the fact that it came off one of our own players is almost irrelevant. It came from, if you sort of bring it back from that point, it's an OG. It's poor communication to, either Martin or Temple, I believe it was. Either of them could have cleared the ball if one had left it for the other, because they weren't being challenged by a Galway man in any particular way. The corner was probably needless. I think Kearns probably could have let the ball go out. Now, it was close-ish, but I think the shot was going wide. And then that shot came about by sort of dithering on the edge of our own box when, a big toe bog or any kind of clearance towards the halfway line, and none of this happened. So it really was error upon error upon error, which is annoying when, again, like on the back of Friday too, you're giving teams a leg up in the game without them having to be brilliant. And we had to work for our goal. Our goal, I thought, had brilliance to it, and then they get something soft like that. So a bit disappointed with that one, to be honest, because you kind of felt if you were able to ride that out a bit later into the match. I didn't see anything from Galway other than sort of brawn that was going to get them what they wanted.
Brawn is the word. I was surprised. Well, a little surprised when I saw 5 changes from Friday's team. But then when you actually break it down, you can kind of understand, as you said, Lewis Temple coming in. I thought Lewis did very well. The sort of the 2 changes for me, which I was a bit surprised, was the 2 central midfield area. Coyle and McEnroy stepped out, and in came JJ and Ellis Chapman, 2 superb players. But I just personally, I thought it was a little bit strange. But when, as you mentioned there, Donny, when you actually see the physicality and the size, those 3 players, Cunningham, Hickey, and Borden, are 3 absolute monsters of men. And that sort of made more sense then when you look at Ellis Chapman. Even when Sean Boyd came on, Sean Boyd is no slouch. But the sheer physicality and size of the Galway team is one of their biggest assets. I think Duff said he was happy enough for Naon 80 minutes of the performance. It was almost the textbook away performance. Keep everything tight. But again, we saw that slightly similar to Friday against Rovers. We saw that little 10 minutes of edginess, and we were sort of slashing clearances and um, composure, which is one of our real strong points. We just seemed to lose it slightly. The goal again, from where I was with the Shells fans, we were 80 yards away down the other end, so we couldn't quite see it. Then there was a little bit of confusion. The goal was given, linesman's flag goes up, the goal wasn't given, and then eventually it seems that the right decision was made. But um, yeah, it was just we just seemed just to lose track for a couple of minutes, and in those few minutes, like Friday against Rovers, we got punished. The goal itself, I initially thought it was a goal scored by a Galway player, but when you look at the replay, it's just so unshells like, isn't it? It was just one of those really bizarre goals to give away.
Yeah, I think we're looking at maybe that this is this the legacy of a bit of a transitional period for the team where we expect more of them and they expect more of themselves. I think now in possession and to be tidier and to have more of the ball. And every game we've played this season, I think now we've had um, dominance of possession. We've had dominance in terms of shots on goal and so on. Whereas only a couple of years ago, we were sort of seen as being stoic and we'd soak up pressure and maybe hit teams on the break if it was through Jack Moylan or Jarvis or some of those guys. Now we're expected to be sort of to be like the professors of the game and to dictate how things go, and we're favorites for most encounters. However, then you see, as the word I keep coming back to, the sort of duality where when the mask falls, it falls entirely, and then, as you said, slashing at clearances, just real scrappy stuff. Not even asking, not asking people to do anything particularly technically difficult. Just the sort of nuts and bolts of the game seem to disappear from our grasp for periods of time, and I suppose what you want there is leadership or on the field, and someone to sort of organize, to bang a few heads together, to be someone coming in and clearing house and not kind of just after you, after me stuff. And frankly as well, we haven't seen it in a while. The tactical goalkeeper injury could have been maybe utilized after Connor's save or something, around that time, to maybe take the air out of things for a while. Far be it from me to endorse such dark art practices, but it gets done to us, and you've got no comeback. So in a situation like that, where you've managed the game beautifully, you've gotten what you wanted, there's a half an hour or less on the clock, and you've just had the daylight scared out of you with a point blank save by your goalkeeper. You see goalkeepers going down with when nobody's been even in their half. I think that might have been an opportune moment the next time the ball went out of play there for Connor, maybe to say that he had to change his contact lens, even if he doesn't wear them, or to come up with some reason for people to be able to have a bit of a sort of an impromptu team talk. But even saying that, we could have retaken the lead. Paddy Barrett had an unbelievable chance. It was a lovely flick on by Sean Boyd to the back stick. It's effectively a free header from 6 yards. He gets to throw his heft behind the header. It's an amazing save. You can see Barrett stood there with his hands on his head, just incredulous that the ball hasn't gone in. However, if you're going to be hypercritical, there was a corner of the goal there to aim at. There was plenty of roof of the net to aim at when you're that close. A bit like you were saying about maybe Norris's strike on Friday, any other place but around there, and it probably, even if it does hit his hand, he probably doesn't have the strength to stop it from creeping over the line. So, I mean, and Lewis Temple almost bundled one in from the opposite side then. So we did still create chances. And again, if we weren't doing this, not every point is created equal. And you do get a sense of, like, are you playing well? Are you are you in games? Are you happy with what you're seeing from your team? And I think, any reasonable minded Chelsea fan at this point would look at those 4 league games and the President's Cup too and say, look, we're playing very well. We've never particularly enjoyed these Monday fixtures. We've never particularly enjoyed, since we've been back in the Premier, a trip to Eamon DC. I haven't enjoyed a trip to Eamon DC myself since 2019, with the double pitch invasion and the 3-2 comeback.
Yeah.
So, so we've gotten one more point from Eamon DC Park than we did last year. Hopefully there's more to come. But I do feel that it was a little bit left behind. But again, performance is still encouraging.
Yeah, well, Damien Duff seemed very content with the performance. Just before we move on, Donny, we mentioned John Caulfield last week. There seems to be that nice little edge brewing, a healthy edge brewing between Duff and John Caulfield. I know John is a bit of a spiky character on match nights. Off the field, he's a very nice chap. I think they both may have picked up a yellow from where I was. Not entirely sure. But I must say that the Galway crowd were fantastic last night. It was pretty much, from what I could see, a sellout, and even the locals were chuffed and really encouraged to see such a big attendance, good atmosphere. Shells fans, again, did themselves proud, and hopefully we can continue those strong numbers on the road. Just before we move on, Dunny, looking at last night's results across the league, it really shows how volatile it is. Anyone can beat anyone. Drogs are flying at the moment. We'll touch on them shortly. But all in all, I think, when you're banking points, we've now averaged 2 points per game for 4 games, 8 points. First round of games, that's not bad at all. But staying in the mix, picking up points as we go, especially on the road. That's I think that last night's points, when we talk, let's say in late September, October, points like that could be absolute gold dust.
I completely agree. It's hard to take the passion, and ultimately, who wants to take the passion out of football? But sometimes you have to be a little dispassionate when you look at points on the board, particularly so early in a long season. I said it recently to you that we don't lose many football matches under Damien Duff, and look, you got to stay in the fight. You got to keep racking up a point. If he said it himself last year. It's obviously a mantra that he has with the squad about, if you can't win a game, don't lose it. And we don't lose many. Whereas you look at other teams going through transitional periods in the league who would have bigger budgets than ours. And with fan bases, some of which might be volatile as well. There's already a few managers coming under some criticism and so on. It's a very much what have you done for me lately league, and things like Derby wins on the opening weekend in the Aviva Stadium or whatever seemed like a lifetime ago. Derry City with their sort of vaunted spending power and so on. Look where it's got them so far. But it's a marathon and not a sprint. And as you said, banking points really is the name of the game. And if we can back that up now with 2 more results, hopefully 2 wins from our next 2 home games, we'd be looking back at this chunk of games and you'd be going, well, that's a really good return. If we manage to win those next 2, for example, you effectively you can look at, say, well, we're not far off from the end. We'll be finishing the end of the first round of games, if you like, with a couple of Dublin derbies, I think. And look, they're always volatile, and who knows what way they might go. It's not usually dependent on form, but a couple of results to the positive now ahead of us, and we've got a good sort of basis for where we're going to take the rest of the season.
2 big games to come. Thank you, Donny. And a big thank you to everyone who has given their kind words of praise and comments. I think both Donny and myself were inundated with lovely comments over the weekend. But first and foremost, thank you to everyone who takes time to listen to the pod. please get in touch. We're now up on all the social media platforms. And it's important for us and for you, if you can possibly, to share this podcast with, through your friends groups, word of mouth, get it out there. Week on week, we're seeing our listenership increase, which is wonderful. And as we say every week, this is a podcast for the fans, by the fans. So please don't be afraid to get in touch. Now, Donny, looking ahead, in times past, Shells would have, we got the visitors this weekend, this Friday, Drogheda United. And dare I say it, they are the informed team. Kevin Doherty and Dara Doyle are doing a superb job. Two former good Reds men. We're always happy to see them do well. But of course, this Friday night, we hope they don't do so well. But in times past, only the visit of Drogheda may have been seen as perhaps a slightly favourable fixture. Not so this Friday. They're the informed team coming to Talca Park.
Yeah, in some respects, it's kind of irrelevant. I think how Drogheda are doing when it comes to how we approach them as a football club, because as you say, it almost doesn't seem to matter where they are in the table, what's at stake, how many points are separating the teams, how many league places are separating the teams. We went to their place, let's call it United Park, just so I don't have to cycle back through the different sponsors they've had. We went to United Park last year, and it was an absolute battle every time. They frankly had no business giving us much of a game on the run in last year. In our last three fixtures that we needed to win, they had bigger fish to fry with a cup final on the horizon, and obviously subsequently had to play in the playoff final to keep their position in the league. And yes, the game was extremely tight. And I believe it was an odd goal that we came out on the right side of it. So we know it's never easy yet. They hit an absolute screamer. They finished 2-1. So I mean, and that's when they had effectively nothing to play for, and they played not a shadow team, but they played a sensible team based on what they had ahead of them in the coming weeks. So the fact that now they are joint
same points as us.
Same points.
I think there's slightly better goal difference.
Better goal difference. What that should do is maybe give them a little bit more confidence. But what it should do for us is very much have our eyes wide open when it comes from our playing staff perspective about the significance of the fixture, and that there's going to be no gimmies. They just turned bows over on their patch. They've had some very impressive performances home and away, so they were expected to be, frankly, to be filled in, to be tuned like an old guitar by St. Pat's on the opening day, and they kept them out. So scoring goals against this team obviously is going to be tricky. We managed 2 against them in the President's Cup final, but of course they are a couple of bodies light. They still are. They had their goalkeeper sent off. So did we really get a sense of what's in store for us on Friday from that evening? Possibly not. We certainly know we have tools to hurt them, but they're going to be coming full of confidence, and just something about Kev Doherty and Damien Duff. I don't know if it just brings my mind back to that, whatever comment it was, a real Shelburne person, or the real Shelburne people know the story, blah, blah, blah. And the sort of spite that came up between the two managers a few seasons back. Kev Doherty has always had a knack of being able to get under the Damien Duff skin, I think, a little bit. And when it's come to tactics, even though I think, the objective view would be that we have a better hand of cards, Kev Doherty's always managed to find a way to try and match up well with us with an inferior pack.
Yeah, Kevin is learning his trade, and he's putting everything he's learned into action. Drogs have gone now full time this season, Dunny. It's probably too early to say that's the result or that's the effect of their great start to the season. But they've recruited well. They've recruited players who are not League of Ireland veterans, but certainly players who've got 50, 100 games under their belt. They know the league. There's a strong Shells connection there. Connor Kane, Andy Quinn, Shane Farrell, Ryan Brennan. But I think, as you said, like for the Presidents Cup game, which is nearly a month ago now, I don't really think it wasn't Drogheda United that we know what they can be. I think, as you said, they're missing a few bodies. Yeah, they got the keeper sent off in the second half. But when I always look forward to, of course, I look forward to every game. The derbies, of course, I love them. But you mentioned there, United Park, or whenever we play these guys, it's such a tough battle. And as you said, it doesn't matter if they're behind us one place or 10 places or whatever. I honestly think our toughest battles last year were against Drogheda. They're a tough nut to crack. They don't give much away, and you know, thankfully we're home this Friday. It gives us a chance to hopefully get 3 points on the board. But from a Shell's point of view, do we see Shell's perhaps revert back to the formation we saw, team selection we saw for the first 2 or 3 games, or do you think anyone last night against Galway? Perhaps James Norris. But has anyone else, nailed down their application for a start this Friday?
Yeah, I think the thing that impressed me most about the change of shape and so on last night maybe was the adaptability that we have to whether we've seen 4-4-2 work. We now have seen 5 at the back work at times. So I think some people put their hand up more than others. I think there's 1 or 2 maybe wouldn't have been overly happy with their contribution over 90 minutes in Galway, but it's a tough fixture, and maybe not one that would have suited everybody's particular set of skills. A lot of it hinges for me on whether Sean Gannon is available or not. Sean Gannon wasn't in the squad last night. He wasn't named on the bench. I'm not sure if he travelled, in fact. Now, the optimist in me would say that that's good squad management and that he was told to put his feet up or take the dog for a walk and, do whatever he needs to do to be right for this coming week's training and for Friday night. And that when it comes to maybe those Monday games as well, because we have a deeper panel and more adaptable players that we can roll with the punches, if you like. But I think if Sean Gannon's fit, you have to play him. And therefore, he's got to go in at right back for me, and you go back to a back 4. Now, if Tyreek Wilson, who again wasn't named in the squad, is still unavailable, I think you go 4 at the back, with Norris left and Gannon on the right. And then you've got a decision to make at centre back. One would presume Cam Lebich and Paddy Barrett would probably still hold it down there, injuries aside. So I think we could be reverting back to the 4-4-2 that either was due to start against Drogheda in the President's Cup, which would have had Ali Coote, or Caffrey will keep his place. I was incredibly impressed with Caffrey at wing back. Real engine on him to get up and down. Like, I don't know if anybody would have ran more than him. He was just an insatiable amount of running from end line to end line. He himself. And look, you were talking about the middle of the park and earlier on, and the changes. I think though some of the people who impressed me most would have been JJ Lunny coming in. It was notable, obviously, to Mark Hoyle's your club captain. He's fit, he's available, he's rested. I thought Lunny suited that sort of possession style that we had. He sees things that other players don't. Sometimes he can try things with his left foot to break lines and so on. I know he has been accused in the past of just going sideways and backwards too often. I think time has proven those people to be at least over egging that argument. I thought he looked very impressive from the remove of television last night. There would be an argument maybe for having him in the team. But again, I guess what we need to, it can't be a referendum on everybody every week. This is a long slog. Europe and Cup competitions to come. It's a case of who's ready now, who's in form now, what shape is working now, working around injuries, working around tiredness and knocks and swelling and things that we don't know about as fans. That the management pick up during the week at training. So it's to see how our guys feel. Is he limping? Has he got a cut? This kind of thing. So, I think we'll go 4-4-2. But look, if we have to adapt, we can adapt. I think the players have shown enough to suggest that we have a few tricks up our sleeve if required. The main thing is, can we score? I'd love to see Meepo and Boyd get back on the score sheet again, and we kind of pick up where we left off the last time, and hopefully if we hit the back of the net more than once, I think we're normally good value for a win.
Yeah, well, we've scored in every game so far this year, which is very positive. And as you said earlier, Donny, we've created chances in every game, which is probably the hardest part. Well, some people might say putting the ball in the net is the hardest part, but as you said, Brendan Clark's fine save last night, Paddy Barrett would have got his opening goal of the year. So it's this Friday, 7:45. Hopefully everyone can make it for another big, raucous, loud, angry, boisterous noise. The Riverside looked brilliant again last week. I don't care what anyone says. It's the noise off it. I was standing behind the Drumcondra end down near the shops, and the roar, even when we got an early corner, it was fantastic. It's like the days of old. It's like when you come out on stage, Donny, that roar. They're all there for you, Donny. They love to see it.
That's the roar in my head, yeah. That's what I hear, the big crowd.
Yeah, so well done to everybody. Just before we finish, Donny, one thing, and I don't know if you saw Tim Clancy's comments after last night's game, Cork against Waterford. He was very unhappy with a second yellow card that was shown to, I think, one of his players, Anderson. Now, I actually thought the referee got it right. Well, anyway, but he then says after the match on TV, he says to the referee, I thought you were, I don't think he used the word of disgrace. I thought you were dreadful or something like that to the referee.
Shocking, I think.
Shocking, okay. I thought you were shocking. And then apparently, this is, Damien McGrath, the referee, he's not here. Apparently he said to Clancy, well, I thought your team were shocking. Or something along those. That's according to our good friend Tim Clancy. Now, do you think that if that was true, do you think the referee is out of order? Or do you think Tim Clancy, if you give it, you got to take it? I just think every week there's something from these guys across the board, always giving it about referees. It's an impossible, and we all know it's an impossible job for referees. But personally, I had a little chuckle when I was driving home last night from Galway, hearing his comments.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know, Andy, that you'd be coming from the perspective of a former ref,
and referees union, yeah,
and that never leaves you. And look, no ref, no game, and we have to be cognizant of the fact that there isn't a huge pool of referees waiting to come in to replace these refs that we're all giving out about week in, week out. So just saying that every one of them is terrible, and he shouldn't ref a game again, and blah blah blah. Unfortunately, there isn't a queue out the door waiting to step into the breach and take on the job. So, about Tim Clancy, I mean, look, Tim Clancy. When you mention his name to me, I can't but think of him grabbing a Shelbourne fan by the throat, live on camera. After we won the first division in 2019 there. So
yeah,
he's a man who's known to bouts of extreme passion. So I wouldn't necessarily take it as gospel that he said, I thought you were shocking. He might be paraphrasing his own language. The only thing I would say, not that it really matters. I mean, they're two sort of separate things in that one is about how should you speak to referees and how should referees be allowed to respond or to speak to players and managers. The other is the incident itself. I thought the second yellow was very harsh. A free would have, I don't think anyone would have been calling for your man to be sent off if they'd just given a free in or whatever. There was very little contact, but in the heat of the moment, the player's gone over very dramatically. And look, it happens. If it was a Shells player, you'd be calling for it probably. But anyway, that's kind of irrelevant. But that is why he approached. He's been done late in the game. They almost saw it out for a draw with 10 men. He's gone over full of urine and vigor, and went over to him and gave him what he thought would have been an unaddressed piece of his mind. And what I would say from the referee's point of view is, if Tim Clancy says to you, "I thought you were shocking," then you should respond to Tim Clancy, and you should be saying, "I thought your substitutions were shocking," or "I thought your formation was shocking," or something like this. Attack the attacker, the person who's coming for you. Saying that I think your team is shocking is not only not directly dealing with Tim Clancy, but it's also opening yourself up to, now this is a referee who, to be fair, has not been given the right to reply, although referees aren't known for being verbose and coming out and wanting to address the public. But when he says, "I think your team were shocking," you're kind of saying, if you're a Cork City player, and whether it's true or not, Tim Clancy is going, they're all going to believe what Tim Clancy says. So he's going to come in and say, that referee has said that you, and all of those players are shocking. How is he going to referee a Cork game again with imbalance? How are the Cork City players going to view him from this point on for the rest of the season? And look, as I said, the pool of refs is a shallow one, and these guys are going to come up again as fourth officials and linesmen and so on. And ultimately, I'm sure he will probably referee a Cork City game before the season is out. And this is the guy who thinks you're all shocking footballers.
Yep.
Not a great look. I'm all for giving Tim Clancy a black eye, metaphorically and in some cases possibly literally. But in this case, maybe the semantics could have been, if we are to believe him, the semantics weren't great in either direction.
Yeah, well, just in case you think this is a Cork City podcast, it isn't. Just one of the many talking points over the last few days. Thanks for that, Donny. And I believe Damien McGrath is referee this Friday in Tolka, and that's all we care about. Tolka Park, Friday night, 7:45. If you can get down, please do. Let's make it the most intimidating place for our visitors. Donny, thank you again, as always, this week for your wonderful analysis. Anyone who wants to get in touch, check us out on all the media pages. Please send us your comments, your feedback. We would always delighted to hear from you. And we will speak to you again next week. Thanks for joining us.